All right, welcome to another explainer. Today, we're taking some pretty complex frameworks and turning them into your ultimate competitive advantage. We are stepping into what I like to call the strategic sandbox. Look, if you've ever felt like your team is just constantly putting out fires or reacting to market volatility instead of actually designing the future, believe me, you are not alone. But the solution isn't just working harder or putting in more hours. It's about mastering this concept called perspective mix. So today, we're going to build a step-by-step tutorial on exactly how to use a highly targeted mix of diverse perspectives to solve your absolute most complex business challenges.
Okay, let's just dive right into this. Strategic thinking is not intelligence alone, it is the ability to consciously mix diverse perspectives into one coherent direction of action. I absolutely love this quote because it totally shatters that old myth of the lone genius leader. Think of your strategy not as a sword you use to just hack away at a problem, but rather like a prism. When a single beam of light, which is your business problem, enters that prism, it splits into multiple colors or multiple perspectives. And it's really only when you understand all those colors together that you actually see the full truth.
Because here are the actual stakes we're dealing with. Leaders without strategic thinking are honestly just trapped. They fight fires daily, they constantly confuse urgency with importance, and worst of all, they mistake mere motion for actual progress. But then you have strategic leaders, and they operate on a completely different wavelength. They turn chaos into clarity. They actively convert threats into launch pads. You see, the reality of today's business environment is that it's insanely volatile, interconnected, and non-linear. Linear thinking, it literally just collapses under this kind of complexity. If you only have one single perspective, you are basically flying blind.
So here is our roadmap for this explainer. 1. The Strategic Lighthouse. 2. Our foundation, the 5W1H method. 3. Execution, using the OODA Loop. And 4. The Strategic Mindset.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the Strategic Lighthouse. Before we hand over the exact frameworks, we really need to establish a mental model for why perspective diversity is unequivocally your strongest weapon in business. I want you to picture a lighthouse. Now, a lighthouse doesn't just frantically detach from its foundation and go chasing ships around the ocean in the dark, right? That would be totally absurd. Yet, if we're being honest, that is exactly what most reactionary management teams look like. Instead, the lighthouse stands still. It sees far, it warns early, and it guides safely. Strategic thinking functions in the exact same way for your business. By utilizing a real mix of diverse perspectives, your strategy becomes that lighthouse. It anticipates market storms way before they hit, which stops reactionary panic in the boardroom and lets your team execute with incredible, calm confidence. You've probably heard this before, but execution without strategy is just exhausting, and strategy without execution is basically hallucination. The balance comes down to a simple formula. Action times direction times timing equals your strategic outcome. If you don't have a diverse mix of perspectives, your action is blind, your direction is super narrow, and your timing, well, it's just accidental. But when you consciously mix those perspectives, that is a game changer. Your action becomes laser precise, your direction expands, and your timing becomes absolutely decisive.
Moving right along to Section 2, Foundation, the 5Ws 1H method.
So this right here is your foundation lens. It is the mandatory step you have to take before any action is ever launched. But first, we get to name the enemy: premature solution bias. This is that incredibly dangerous tendency to try and solve a problem before you fully expanded and understood it. Have you ever sat in a meeting where some massive problem is announced, and literally within 5 minutes someone is already pitching a solution based entirely on their one specific department's viewpoint? Yeah, we all have. That is a single lens obsession. And strategic failure rarely happens because a team doesn't have the right tools. It happens because they let this specific bias dictate their path. Every single strategic challenge has to be expanded before it can be solved. And this framework right here is how you force perspective diversity into your daily workflow. Let's actually run a tutorial scenario right now. Imagine a highly disruptive, tech-savvy competitor just entered your market. Okay, don't panic. Don't just slash your prices. Run it through the sandbox. 1. Why does this matter? Well, because our market leader status is threatened. 2. What exactly is the root problem? Honestly, it's not their tech, it's our slow delivery times. 3. Who is impacted? Our legacy clients who might jump ship. 4. When is our leverage? We have to act before their marketing campaign scales up next quarter. 5. Where does this play out? Mostly over in our European market. 6. How can we create unique value to solve this? By bundling our software with dedicated, high-touch consulting. You see? By forcing your team through these exact 6 steps, you systematically map the terrain without any bias. All right, Section 3, Execution, the OODA Loop.
Okay, so now that we've mapped the terrain, we need to move, and we need to move with serious agility. But here's the crucial point. Speed all by itself is incredibly dangerous. The OODA Loop is what ensures your speed is actually intelligent. Here's a super surprising fact for you. This framework was developed by a military strategist named John Boyd. They actually called him 40-second Boyd because he could win any fighter pilot dogfight in under 40 seconds flat using this exact mental loop. It's quite literally how you systematically process those diverse perspectives we just gathered and turn them into relentless, rapid-fire business execution.
The loop has 4 relentless stages. Let's apply it back to our competitor scenario. First, observe. You go out and gather raw data on that new competitor's European rollout. Second, orient. You process that raw data through the 5W1H perspectives we literally just built. Third, decide. You commit fully to that consulting bundle strategy. And fourth, act. You launch the offer to your legacy clients without a second of hesitation. And here's the kicker. The moment you act, the market reacts, which means boom, you instantly go back to step 1 and observe again.
Now, I want to pause specifically right here on the second step, orient. Listen, if you just observe data and immediately act on it, you are just reacting. The orient phase is the absolute secret weapon of the strategic leader. It is where you take lessons from the past, realities of the present, and implications for the future, and you mix them with the creative and analytical mindsets of your entire team to synthesize a true competitive advantage. Orientation is the critical filter that ensures your incredibly fast decisions are actually the right decisions. And I'll tell you, when you truly master this loop, your entire view of business obstacles completely transforms. Check out this powerful metaphor from our source material. A wall, for one, is a dead end. For a strategist, it is a climbing surface. When you effectively mix perspectives in that orient phase, challenges are no longer roadblocks. No way. They're literally just data in disguise. They're signals of transition and wide-open invitations to redesign your whole approach. The wall itself hasn't changed at all. Your perspective has. And that reveals the footholds that were actually there the entire time.
Which brings us perfectly to section 4, the strategic mindset. We've got our frameworks, but let's be real, they are completely useless if they just sit in a drawer somewhere. Strategic thinking has to be an ongoing daily habit. So here are the specific practices you've got to cultivate. First up, ask second-order questions. Stop just asking, what happens if we do this? Start asking, and then what happens next? Second, ruthlessly challenge your own assumptions on a weekly basis. Third, build in the habit of reflecting before reacting. Really consciously create that space for the orient phase. And finally, always think in systems, not silos. Ask yourself, how does a minor change in our supply chain ripple all the way through to the customer service experience? To sustain all this, you're going to have to make a major internal shift. As humans, we're naturally wired with default mindsets, right? We desperately crave certainty, we heavily focus on the short term, we highly value brute effort, and we generally just accept the default state of things. To be a true strategic leader, you have to completely invert this. You got to trade certainty for relentless curiosity. You have to trade short-term thinking for long-term vision. You need to stop relying on sheer brute effort and start looking for structural leverage. And above all else, you have to stop accepting the default, and you have to begin consciously designing your outcomes. And that brings us to the ultimate equation for your success. Total clarity, combined with radically diverse perspective, backed by the courage to actually act on the things others don't even see yet, and sustained by relentless consistency. That right there equals strategic mastery. If any one of those variables is a 0, well, the whole equation zeroes out. But when you actively optimize all 4, your business outcomes stop being a game of chance and they become a matter of pure inevitability. Your execution becomes elegant, and those heavy decisions suddenly become so much lighter. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this one lingering thought. Strategic thinking is never about magically predicting the future. It's about rigorously preparing your mind to win in literally any future. By utilizing the 5W1H to comprehensively expand your problems and the OODA Loop to relentlessly execute your solutions, you have built the ultimate lighthouse for your leadership. So, as you look at the real challenges facing your business this week, ask yourself, will you merely react to reality? Or will you use a diverse perspective mix to completely redefine it? The sandbox is all yours. Go use it.